Welcome to DU Digimon. Hello and welcome to DU Digimon and welcome to another video. If you're liking this sort of content, please make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel and ding that notification bell so you're not missing out on any of the latest content. Now you might be thinking, Josh, old buddy, old pal of mine, we've done a BT21 tier list. Why are we doing another video? That is because last time we did my votes. This time we're looking at everyone else's. So we're looking at the 75 people on paper, people who voted. In actuality, it's probably more around, let's see, 3, 9, 22, 24, about 25 people by the looks of it. Because unfortunately, weird thing with Tier Maker, if you're not logged into the website, it does not take your votes. But, you know, we're going to look at other people that voted, the overall tier list, what people are thinking. This is still going to give us a good idea of what's going on. So, looking at Tier 1 first. Raw Knights, of course, at Tier 1. I am not surprised by this at all. Raw Knights is really good, you know. There's not only really a few decks that can really deal with it. It's just got so much control, so much just overall power when it gets going, and it's going to get more support in BT22, so I am not surprised that people voted this way at all. Blue-Green Imperial, also not too surprised. I mean, look at the voter sway, 17 in Tier 1, 18 for Raw Knights if you're interested. Blue-Green Imperial, of course, did get hit on the last ban list, but it was, you know, kind of a case of one of the cards was that, you know, the card that was hit, the Stingmon. Yeah, it's a non-once per turn, you know, draw, and would help them with their general kind of like consistency. But overall, for the engine, it didn't really hurt it. It just slightly altered the consistency. So it's still really strong. Granted, I don't know if it's really putting in as many results as it was before, but it definitely could do. And what's really fun is the fact that not only is Blue-Green Imperial Digimon in Tier 1, but so is Red-Purple Imperial Digimon. For, like, I think the first time in the game's history, both of these decks are in the same tier, and that tier is Tier 1, which is insane. Obviously, this is based on our voters and stuff like that, and people's opinions do differ, but, you know, Red-Purple Imperial Digimon, again, not showing, I think, as many results at the moment, but, you know, it shuts off things, it's super consistent, it's got basically a one, you know, not even a one-card combo, per se, it's got a one-phase combo. You know, doing the start of main with the Wormmon, going up into the promo Shadramon, playing out something, DNAing, doing the thing, going into Dragon mode, going into this, shutting off your opponent's, you know, playing by Digimon by effects and Tamers by effects, I believe. You know, ugly card, disgusting card. You know, and the only thing that really hurts Red-Purple Imperial, again, is that consistency. Any sort of DNA deck, the real crux to it, the real kind of issue with it is consistency. Then going on to the next one is Blue Armor. Again, I'm not too surprised here. Blue Armor, especially with the new support, has really, you know, amped up. And the only real things that really hurt it on the last ban list were kind of things to hurt the more yellow side of the deck. So you stuff like your Blinding Ray and things like that. The blue version, which is now the version that everyone is playing, not really hurt at all in the slightest, and it hits like a train. It can do some really cool, you know, basically we're seeing more of an Armor Rush style, where the Magnemon X is kind of like, yeah, this is our kind of big boss monster. I think I saw a video the other day, I think it might have been Digipanda, I can't remember, and he described it really well. If it was him, I can't remember, where essentially Magnemon X is kind of like the big brother that shows up when the little brothers are getting bullied. You know, it's kind of almost with a backup win condition now, which is insane to think. But Blue Armor is absolutely looking strong. And then Sakuya Tribal, I mean, wowzers, a deck that has gone from, you know, complete kind of Tier 2, even Rogue Tier, you know, a couple of formats ago, all the way up to Tier 1 because it is so efficient, being able to use the options so quickly, and such generic options as well, you know, being able to just use Scramble or Trainings or whatever to climb up. You could still do Shine Greymon Ruin Mode loop shenanigans with this deck, you just can't do it as badly as you could back when the Kazuhamon was, you know, at 4 copies. But yeah, Sakuya Tribal, I think, has absolutely cemented itself as the best yellow deck of the format. you know, and is absolutely bonkers. Next, going into tier 1.5s. This is the decks that are good, just not as good as up here. We've got Leviamon with 15 votes in tier 1.5. This has definitely been getting a little bit of traction, I think, as a kind of almost an anti-meta pick. You know, it's the very fact that a lot of these decks up here, well, less blue armor, more, you know, red, purple, Imperial, Royal Knights, to an extent Sakuya Tribal as well. A lot of them do on-play shenanigans, and Leviamon will just punish them for that. You play something out, okay, cool, I'm just going to bring my Leviamon out, I'm going to blow up your stuff, you know, using Biting Crush. I'm going to go up into Leviamon X, blow up more of your stuff. You know, it's just really good. You know, so I think definitely getting a bit more of a kind of traction recently. Arguably even more so than 7 Demon Lords on its own. I mean, 7 Demon Lords, I feel like I've not seen it. It's still great. It's still good. It still does a lot. I'd love to see Royal Knights versus 7 Demon Lords in a match on the channel if you guys would be interested in that. But you know, it's kind of lost a bit of traction. You know, this is despite a couple of little bits of support here and there. So, for example, back in BT20, we got the Blast Mode Ace, for example. But nothing in BT21 for this deck. And I think ultimately it kind of stands here. One that some of the guys were quite surprised at was Gallantmon being in tier 1.5 and not tier 1. And I think the reason why it's in tier 1.5 is, yes, it could technically hit harder than stuff like Blue Armor. Like, it could definitely get rid of a lot more security in one turn. But it's also much more easy to deal with a Gallantmon X than it is to deal with a Magnamon X. Because Magnamon X is just, yeah, I'm not affected by anything. But the moment you've turned memory over to the opponent, the Gallantmon is suddenly affected by stuff. So you can more easily remove it. So there is that kind of, that part to that. But Gallantmon, you know, again, is another deck where it's just really shot up in terms of general, you know, it's always been really popular. It is kind of, you know, one of our main character decks. And it's just gotten really, really big in terms of how good it actually is. You know, it's kind of a shame that both Sakuyamon and Gallantmon are both doing really well, whereas Bunnies is kind of, you know, slightly lower down the tier list. You know, not all the tamers are getting the same amount of love, is what I'm trying to say. Next we've got Crossheart. Crossheart does some crazy stuff. It did get some support in BT21, of course, with the new kind of you know, Crossheart engine, where we've got a lot of things that give rush, a lot of DP boosts, and of course this new superior mode pictured on screen, who just says no to anything that lives, you know. So, you know, really, really good. Can do some absolutely nutty stuff once it gets fully set up, but can struggle a little bit with keeping up with some of these tier 1 decks if it can't get set up quick enough. Ancient Garurumon still being put into 1.5. Quite a few put into tier 2, even a couple putting into jank tier. Don't agree with that at all. Ancient Garurumon, I think, can still do some good stuff, and I feel like you could still play it. Like, say for example, you were a Gauga player in the last format. You could probably move to Ancient Garurumon now and be fairly comfortable. I think, you know, it's kind of similar, has a couple of things, you know, going on which are the same. You know, and I think it's you know, it's as good as it is right now. Obviously did get hurt by the Ukamons and Hammer Spark and stuff like that, but I mean, if you would play it well enough, you know, maybe you could put Blinding Ray in. I know that's also down at 1 now, but you could maybe put the two of them in combination. You know, there's different ways you can play about with it. Then we've got the purple base version of Lord Knight. This I kind of almost feel like, I can't remember where did I vote this? Did I vote in tier 1.5? No, I didn't. I think I voted it down into tier 2. Where is it? There's black base. Where did I vote it? Oh no, I did vote it in tier 1.5. I kind of feel like now you possibly could make an argument for Lord Knight being in tier 2. Because although you've got the Dark Animal engine, the Dark Animal engine is good, it's kind of lost a lot of its sway, and it doesn't, you know, I don't think it does as much as, say, Leviamon. Leviamon punishes people for playing the game, whereas Lord Knightmon, you know, yeah, we can do 5 checks in one turn, absolutely easy, but we often can't close the game. We kind of just have to ruin mode and hope that we've locked them out at that point. But I mean, it's a deck that I love, and hopefully it will get new support in BT22. You know, I'm really hoping it will. We're going to do a video on that, by the way, kind of thinking about what could be coming in BT22. It's already in my brain. You know, despite the fact BT21 has been out for like, what, a week or something officially. But yeah, purple base, I think I can respect it being a 1.5. Purple hybrid. Now this one has fallen a little bit. This was definitely tier 1 in the last format. A lot of people still playing with it. It's still really strong. You know, I've been doing some testing with some stuff today, and I went up against purple hybrid, and they were doing some like memory looping kind of stuff instead. So you were using they were using Mimi, for example, the old Mimi, the 2-cost one. They were using the 1 copy of Louis to gain memory going out of the raising. Like they're finding ways to make it work. You know, yeah, it's not as good as it was before, but it's still pretty strong. Then we've got Adventure. Adventure is one of my favourite decks to have come out of this format, you know, with the structure decks and with BT21. It's absolute nostalgia power. Like, it does so much. It goes absolutely bonkers. You could kind of, you know, you kind of do a yo-yo effect with your Angelomon. You could just go into your Togemon, go into your Angelomon. The Angelomon digivolves your Palmon into the Togemon. The Togemon digivolves into the Angelomon, which digivolves the Angelomon into Wargreymon or something. You know, it's really, really funny. And right now, it's probably my contender for me taking to store regionals. You know, because it's just so good. It's so fun. Yes, it does have some setup issues, like any deck that kind of relies on having tamers out. But once it's got those tamers out, there's very few decks that can deal with it. You know, it could very easily do 4-5 checks in a single turn, if not more. You know, it has a lot of control elements. It's got a lot of protection from the Wargreymon. Like, it's got options, you know, and you play it in a bit of a weird way. Your ratios are a bit strange for it compared to a normal deck, but yeah, it's a really fun deck, and I can completely appreciate it being in tier 1.5. But do also agree with no one voting it in tier 1, because it does a lot, but it's not consistent enough. You know, I think we've talked before on the channel about, you know, there's a perfect kind of graph for a tier 1 deck, and it's exactly where power and consistency meet at the same spot, at least in my opinion. Then we've got Shine Greymon at tier 1.5. This, of course, did get new support in the new set. This got voted all the way up into tier 1.5, and I could definitely respect that. I think I put it as tier 1.5 myself, yeah. You know, it's not seeing as many, you know, results. I think we're waiting on some big Latin America events, because for some strange reason, Shine Greymon always does well in Latin America without fail. You know, so we'll see. But yeah, I can respect Shine Greymon doing that. And by all accounts, Shine Greymon, if you're not counting Adventure as a Greymon deck, because Wargreymon's in it, but you know, it's not a Greymon deck. Shine Greymon is, according to the tier list, the best Greymon deck in the game, which is a crime, and Bandai needs to fix this. Yellow Armor is still in tier 1.5. Now, technically, you don't see this one around as much, but I think people are still experimenting with it. You can still do it. You know, with TK down to 1, yeah, that really hurt the deck, but you could still technically experiment with it, and kind of see where the deck can go. So I respect it in tier 1.5. Argument to be made for tier 2, but yeah. Red Hybrid got new support, really, really good. I mean, this Agunimon, for example, is great. It's super quick, it's super fast. One of the best red decks you could name. Yeah, I can respect that being in tier 1.5, and no problem. Galacticmon voted into tier 1.5 as well, and Galacticmon is super scary. I mean, once it gets fully set up, there's very few decks that could deal with a Digimon as big and as powerful as a Galacticmon, as immovable as well, because it just says no to death. Like, you could delete it, you could beat it up, you could try to digivolve it if it has a protection life. That's not going to do anything. The only thing that's really going to kill it outright is DP reduction, and there are very, very, very few decks that are going to be able to DP minus something by 14k. That's really hard to do, and the only yellow decks that are really strong at the moment in the format is stuff like Sakuyamon, and you know, Sakuyamon even then is not going to be DP minusing something down by 14k all the time. There's really going to have to focus on the Galacticmon to do that. It's got a lot of really good catch-up mechanics as well. You know, the moment you kind of think you've dealt with their board, they then just cross into that bloody Snatchmon, and they're just like, oh cool, yeah, I'm playing this out for 2 because I've got 4 Venmons in my trash. Okay, thanks. And now I'm going to Digivolve immediately up into Galacticmon because I can do that. Yeah, it's really scary, really hard to deal with and absolutely immovable. Going down to tier 2, so Alpha Chronicle, and I'm going to talk about Alpha Mon as well. They're both in the same spot, I'm pretty sure. Oh, maybe they're not. I know they are, yeah. Alpha Classic there and Alpha Chronicle. So I actually think the Classic version is better, which is interesting because at least one person voted it into tier 1, possibly in error. I'm not too sure, but I mean, saying that as well, I forgot to say the reason why we're going with most votes, because we used to go off of the average, is we are trying to avoid people making silly votes, because there are some people out there that do silly votes. There was someone in the last tier list who voted trains into tier 1, and we're not allowing that anymore. Most votes is the way to go. You know, now does that mean that you know, enough people could troll us at the same time and vote something stupidly into tier 1 or into jank tier? Yeah, you could, but I'm trusting that you won't do that, because if we do that, we can't have nice things anymore, and we'll go back to voting things privately in the team rather than with all of you. And I don't want to do that. I want to keep voting with you guys, because this channel is ultimately, you know, as much as it is for us, it's also for you. We want to make this a community channel. We want to be interacting with the community, so don't do silly votes. You've been warned, I guess. But anyways, Alpha Chronicle, not consistent enough in comparison to the old Alpha Mon, so I technically think this one's better in my opinion. But you know, I can respect this. We're getting way more votes in tier 2. You know, Alpha Oyukin itself, the ace, is a very good boss monster, so pretty good. Then Beelzemon, and it says BT20 on it because I'm lazy and I did not change enough of these images. And you'll see some other ones which are even funnier. But Beelzemon, I think, is great. It did technically get support in the last set. Nothing in BT21. You know, once the ball gets rolling on it, it is fantastic. It is, you know, absolutely brilliant. Bloomlord, there were plants in this set. You've technically got the Wind Guardian stuff. You've technically got some of the adventure stuff, but I don't think any of it really does anything for Bloomlord. But Bloomlord is very much still a gatekeeper deck, and it can definitely do some really cool stuff. So yeah, I respect it being in tier 2 completely. Next is Three Musketeers. Now this one did get new support in BT21 with some of the new Atmon stuff. And that new Atmon stuff really breathes some life into the deck. I mean, I think last format, I would possibly put Three Musketeers down in Rogue tier, but with the new support, where it's, you know, it's able to delete stuff more efficiency, de-digivolve stuff, you've got the new promo card, like, yeah, I think it's actually, you know, pretty cool. It's pretty good, you know. So I perfectly respect it being in tier 2 here. Like, I think that's perfectly acceptable. Three Great Angels, no longer the best yellow deck of the format. Sakuyamon has absolutely taken that spot, but it's still got a place in my heart. It's still pretty cool. What's kind of ironic is now I don't even know if it's really using any of these now, any of the pictured aces in this image. But you know, I think maybe still using Cherubimon. The other two I don't think you use at all. But you know, which is kind of funny. But yeah, no, I think Three Great Angels can still bang. It can still do some cool stuff. It can still go very wide. You've got a lot of generic angel support in the game that it can take use of. I've seen some builds that are using the new Mastemon promo, for example, and are going very Angelmon based while still keeping the Dominimon top end. And you know, I think it could still do pretty well, just not quite well enough. Then Bunnies, the unloved child of Digimon tamers. It used to be pretty good, but it's falling further and further down. You know, it technically can still do some good stuff. But yeah, I kind of agree with it being in tier 2. It's not quite fast enough, especially when you compare it to its Digimon tamer brethren. Then Chaosmon Axel, my favourite deck from BT20. I love this deck. It was so good. In BT21, it's not really changed at all. You know, we do get the new Dartramon promo, so that is pretty cool. Having something that can de-digivolve and then delete stuff. You know, you could use that technically in combination with your Chaosmon. Use the, not your Chaosmon, your Bancho Leomon. So you can use your Bancho Leomon as your yellow, use the Chaosdramon as your black for the DNA. If you partition, you then go into your Bancho Leomon and go into your Dartramon promo. Digivolve something by 2 with the Bancho-Leomon, and then -5 something else. Then Digivolve something with the Darkdramon, and then delete something. So potentially by doing that, by spreading the Digivolves, you clear 2 bodies off the board rather than 1, which is pretty cool. So technically new support, but I don't think it's enough to really make Chaosmon higher than tier 2. Still fairly inconsistent. And it could definitely do a lot of really cool things. I think it's a fairly good anti-meta deck, I'll be honest, especially when it could go so easily up into Valderarm, who is, you know, one of the best level 7 Digimon that yellow and green have access to. Yeah, I think it's a really fun deck, but just not quite hitting where it needs to. Speaking of that as well, Dinomon is very much up there. Quite a few votes into Rogue tier, but not as much as in tier 2. Dinomon I love. I was absolutely playing the shit out of it at the beginning of this year. It was so fun. Kind of fallen off the wayside of kind of playing with other stuff. I would love to kind of get back on it with Dinomon again. If you'd like to see a profile of Dinomon, do let me know. I'll get working on something. You know, it's really fun. It does a lot of really cool stuff, and obviously it's got that adventure, you know, kind of nostalgia to it with Tyranno, or even more than that, really, more like Virtual Pet kind of nostalgia, I guess. But yeah, really cool. Then Deep Savers also in tier 2, can do some really cool stuff. You know, stopping things from suspending and de-digivolving stuff and bottom decking things, and you know, it's fairly memory efficient. But again, it does have consistency issues. Although I tend to find more with color consistency than anything else, because if you go fully blue, you miss out on using your Deep Savers effects on everything, and if you use all of the Deep Saver stuff, you don't really have the right colors for, you know, to search. I think that will be fixed come when we get the new memory boosts, because I think we're getting a black blue one and a purple blue one, I think, from memory, so that will hopefully help out the deck, but we'll have to wait and see. Jesmon. So Jesmon can do some really funny stuff. You know, you can also use its engine elsewhere and make it do some really cool stuff as well. Obviously, like Dan with his Gankumon build, you know, is one of those examples. You know, if you do want to see a deck profile up, do check that out. We've got that one of those on the channel. But Jesmon, yeah, can do some really cool stuff. Can do a lot of very aggressive things. You know, but ultimately, again, a consistency thing. As you'll see with a lot of these tier 2 decks, consistency is always key. Omnimon, I love Omnimon, but Omnimon absolutely has consistency issues, which I'm hoping will be resolved in BT22. But we'll see. Dex Doru, now this did get support with the new promo. Of the new promos, in testing, and bearing in mind I'm not a Dorumon player, because essentially I was testing because I was going to do like a bait or busted on all of the illustrated pack cards, but unfortunately I lost my script for it, so couldn't do that. But I was testing with Dorumon, and the new Dorumon kind of felt like the most underwhelming of the promos to me, as someone that doesn't play the deck. You know, it's just, you know, big boy, collision, security tech +1. Yes, it lets things unsuspend, but you have to have gone wide to do that, you know, which I don't always know if Doru's doing. So yeah, I can respect it in being tier 2. Mineral OTK, again, consistency can hurt this one, but you can get OTK'd by this on like turn 2, turn 3 if it gets the right setup. Definitely a strong one, just not good enough up here. Bugs could be a good anti-meta pick, to be fair, with the amount of stuff that it just ignores. You know, it could just ignore Raw Knights doing things, it can redirect them, it can, you know, it could ignore Gallantmon deleting it, you know, I think it could be a fairly good anti-meta one, but in general I think anti-meta stuff does not belong up here, because it can't be anti-meta if it is the meta, you know, so I respect Bugs being here. Vortex Warriors, again, consistency can hurt this one, and, you know, if you manage to go into your Medieval Gallantmons, then fair enough, whatever. But the other thing is with Medieval Gallantmon is, yes, it's really good, but people are learning how to play around it. You know, they're learning, oh yeah, my on plays go off before your you know, your all turns effect. So I could play around that. I could delete you before you delete me. So yeah, so despite getting spades of support since the Structured X came out last year, yeah, this is kind of a middle of the road deck, let's be honest. Medusamon, I frigging love Medusamon. It's so fun. You can play it in so many different ways. You could be a bit more control oriented. You could be more aggressive. I've been making some changes since the deck profile we did on it. Still keeping in some of the tricks I put in that deck profile, but changing it up in some little ways. Some of the tech choices I discussed in that video. It's got so many cool ways of just doing stuff and doing loads of checks, and you know, it feels very Birds-like to me, but with less kind of recovery power and more just overall, you know, oomph. I freaking love it. It's so fun. Blue Flare, a deck to me is not fun. I have always hated going up against Blue Flare. Even now it's kind of middle of the road. So I definitely agree with it being here in tier 2. But yeah, Blue Flare can suck all the sausage. Metal Garurumon, always in tier 2. I think it's just gonna stay there forever. You know, it could do its checks. It could make really big things. It could technically do some interesting plays with the new Metal Garurumon Ace, playing stuff out. You know, getting the Metal Garurumon, the Were Garurumon from BT21 to give Alliance and all this sort of stuff. So I think there's some interesting combos you can do with it. But again, very piece dependent. Mervaloop, again, kind of a piece-dependent deck, but can do lots of really cool looping effects, so not a bad one at all. Seadramon, you know, this can do pretty well. You know, ignore the fact that this is a sample image. Like I said, I've not done all these images. A lot of images, guys. But Seadramon can do a lot of really cool kind of things. You know, ignore being redirected, for example. But ultimately, I think tier 2 is a good placement. It's technically gone up from last time, because last time it actually managed to make it into rogue tier, but that is because we used average votes last time. If we'd done most votes, it would have been in tier 2, which is, it's actually one of the decks that kind of made us go, okay, actually we should probably go most votes now. But yeah, Setcon, fuck this deck. I don't care if we don't see it anymore. Fuck it. Go away. Stupid deck. Examon did get some new support, quite strong. Tier 2 I think is definitely a good placement for it. It can DNA a bit more efficiently now with the new support. The Examon X is pretty strong as well. Yeah, I think I agree with this. Birds, I personally think, and look, the voters were very split on this by the looks of it. I personally think Birds is tier 1.5, because Birds is way better than people think it is. Yes, it is a Moon Knight deck, and by that I mean it's just random bullshit go. But sometimes you need a little bit of bullshit to win. I don't know. I'm trying to be clever, but I'm not. Basically, what I'm trying to kind of say is that it's so, you know, it does so much when it's doing lots on deletion stuff. Does so much rush stuff. It can really confuse the player you're going up against. Like it just does. Like I'll never forget. You know, and granted this was a format ago, I'll never forget going up against Blue Armor and warping into Garudamons 3 times in one turn because they kept dying and they kept coming back and I kept looping my warp effect, and I managed to win that match because of the fact I could just do that random kind of bullshit. Technically, you can also play it with some new cards as well. You could play it with the new Guillemon engine, get the on deletions, get the memory gain, and you know, you can trash security technically, and you know, so you can play it with that new Guillemon support, which is kind of funny. I'm more of a Birds purist myself, but no, I love the Birds deck. It's another deck that I'm considering taking to store regionals. But I do personally think Adventure is the better pick, as much as I love it. But Adventure is going to be way more common. Birds won't be. So, you know, let me know in the comments what you guys think I should take to store regionals. You know, just you know, you guys know roughly what decks I have, I think. Next, D Brigade. Technically, the Doctor One helps this as well. Very tight here. Could have gone into Rogue tier, but ended up in tier 2. Which, yeah, I can see that. This is very much a knife edge kind of deck. If we'd gone on the average votes, this would be in Rogue tier, in fact, because there's enough people who voted it into jank tier. But yeah, I agree with that. Then, How the Mighty Have Fallen. Fenrir OTK now squarely in tier 2 after the Fenrir Lugamon for BT17 went to 1. If it gets the right setup, this can still bang. This can still absolutely bang. I mean, we were playing casuals last Friday, and poor Dane went through the ringer when Dan just OTK'd him with this. You know, it's still really good. It just has to have the right setup, which is kind of why I think it's ended up in tier 2. Leopardmon X can do some funny things. Once upon a time, I think this would have been in Rogue Tier. In fact, more people voted it in Jank Tier than Rogue Tier, but more people, of course, voted it into Tier 2. It can do funny things like playing out Medieval Gallantmon for free, which obviously, for the purposes of our Jank Tank tournament on the channel, you can't do, because we've actually banned Medieval Gallantmon from that format. But in the overall kind of state of the game, Leopardmon X can absolutely do funny shit like that. So yeah, I agree with it going there. Lucamon, yeah, I think this is another deck that I could see here. I think 9 times out of 10, Lucamon loses to piloting issues rather than losing to the deck it's going up against. I think with the right pilot, where they can just keep kind of playing their opponent, essentially, keep mind gaming them, it can win most games. But it has to have the right kind of pilot for it and has to have the right setups. So I agree with Tier 2. Magna Hybrid, I also agree in Tier 2. You know, and we'll talk about Emperor Hybrid as well. We might as well. They're kind of the same. Emperor technically got more support because of the promo and the Red Hybrid stuff. You can also just play Red Hybrid where you've got the Emperor Hybrid, Emperor Greymon stuff on the top. Just you have to obviously bear in mind you're not going to have those many colours for the effect of the BT18 SR. But yeah, I think both of them in Tier 2 I think is perfectly agreeable. Necromon in Tier 2 I also agree with. It could do a lot of cool kind of... I'm saying cool a lot. I need to try and increase my vocabulary, guys. It's pretty late, to be fair. Necromon, I think, can do some very... awesome things. Oh, man. With the execute mechanic. But ultimately, again, kind of loses consistency. Numamon used to be absolutely amazing in BT15. Still kind of very middle of the road now. I think there is some cool stuff you can still do with it. There it is again, cool. But just not quite good enough. War Greymon OTK, which is the only... I know saying that Greymon Toolbox is here as well. War Greymon OTK, you know, the more aggressive brother of Greymon Toolbox. We'll kind of talk about both of them here. So I can see these both being in Tier 2. Greymon, of course, will always kind of be right there in the middle in the mix. But you know, it's until we get some really dedicated support for it, it's never going to be quite there at the moment. Just lots of consistency issues. It still plays in a very BT9 way, where you want to get your protection and do all this and stuff like that. And if you don't play it in that way, it can often feel too fragile, not quite doing enough, you know, to kind of square the win. But I mean, if you're playing like a full-on War Greymon OTK version, then you might not want to bother with the protection. I mean, you've got enough security tap +1 effects now. You could just do that. You know, you've got the Owen, which yes doesn't support Greymon per se, but it does support Dragonkins. So you want, you know, once you go into War Greymon, piercing, and you know, the raid, you know, so you don't even necessarily need your BT12 Metal Greymon for you anymore. You know, get that swing as well. So yeah, I think I agree with both of these being in Tier 2, you know, for the time being. We've already talked about Alpha and Hybrid. Little effects, I think, can do some really cool things. I so need to change my vocabulary. Oh my god. Lilith, Doug's good. That's all I'm going to say. Black base, Lord Knight. Now this does work differently to the purple base one. It's very much more Nightmon focused. It is good, but not as good as the purple base version, and even then I'd say purple base is kind of borderline Tier 2 at this point. But this can do some wacky things. But you know, looking at it, very split voters, 1 vote away from the Rogue Tier, you know, so yeah, very close. Seekers, this actually, look at that actually has a matched vote. Now that's interesting actually, because I was aware of one other deck that had the same amount of votes, which is Megidramon. So this has got the same amount of votes here and here. So I wonder, and I'm going to reach out to you guys, do you think, for the purposes of Jank Tank, where all of our Rogue Tier and below decks are legal, we need, in the case of a tie between votes, to look at the average vote? Look at the average vote and then kind of go, okay, is that will make it legal or not? So if we look at average votes for Seekers, it is... Where are you? Where is it? Where is it? Oh, I think it might actually be down in Rogue Tier. Let's have a look. Sorry, I also don't know if... Yeah, there it is, yeah. So Seekers is in Rogue Tier. as I believe is Magidramon. Last time I checked, yep, there it is. So both of those are low enough on the average votes because more people then put them into jank tier. So that's really interesting. So in the case of a tie, do you think we should go off the average vote? You know, just to kind of settle that? Or do you think we should only go off the most votes and, as the tier list has done, scale them up to the highest possible tier? You know, let me know what you guys think. I mean, I think both of these could potentially be very strong compared to some of the stuff down in the rogue tier and the jank tier, but at the same time, if it's an interesting format. Appmon tier 2. Again, I think this is a deck that requires a lot of setup. Once it is set up, oh my lord, it's hard to deal with. I mean, once Gaiamon is there and he's just like, oh hey, I've got blocker and I can protect myself and I've got raid and I can delete stuff and I'm huge at all times. He's like a 24k blocker sometimes. So hard to deal with. But if you could stop them from setting up, they're a piece of piss to deal with. So don't let them set up and you'll be okay. Hunters definitely got some new support in the form of this Arrestramon Superior Mode. I've even some people saying on Discords that this Superior Mode needs to be banned. I don't know if I agree with that, but I think that's possibly Hero Copium because I want to keep it in Heroes. But it is also an absolutely massive dude who can attack twice, can raid and pierce. The only downside to him is counterplay. So if you've got an ace in your hand and this guy attacks in, he's got no protection at all, so you just go bam, you're dead. So not a bad card at all. Millennium Mon, this actually got put up into tier 2 by 1 vote by the looks of it, which is mad. This was actually rogue legal and jank tank legal earlier in the year. But clearly people change their minds. You know, obviously some of us voted on this as well. So I think some of us maybe, you know, I think I ended up voting it into tier 2 to be fair, because I think I underestimated it back in the past. And I think it could be quite hard to deal with. But, you know, I guess that's where it is. And then Magidramon, we kind of talked about it because of the fact it's a deck that has drawn in terms of the votes. Magidramon, personally for me, I think this is a tier 2 deck. I'm going to put my hands up. I'm going to say it's tier 2. I've gone up against it a lot. You're going to see some gameplay against this deck in a deck profile video we're going to be bringing out later this week, which will be for Sylphie B. But you know, this I think it's probably too strong to be in rogue tier for me personally. But again, we'll figure out where it's going. If we want to make it jank tank legal, we absolutely can. If we don't want to, we won't. We'll figure it out. But you know, it is way stronger than people give it credit for. Way stronger. Next, Rogue Tier. So this is, as I mentioned, the stuff which is legal in our Jank Tank series. So first, Dorbitmon OTK. Yep, I completely agree with this. Technically got new support in some forms of the Dragonkin stuff in BT21. But ultimately, you know, a lot of it doesn't help us as well. Like the Gigimon egg, for example, does not help Dorbitmon because all of his stuff is on plays. You know, so I completely agree with it being in Rogue Tier. That is fine by me. Blackwall Greymon OTK, one of my decks that I could potentially be playing in Jank Tank 10. I agree with this. It's one of my favourite decks in the whole game. It's the first deck I ever did on this channel, which the deck profile kind of did, you know, legitimately quite good in terms of views, at least at the time, in terms of subscribers and stuff like that. And I was really, really proud of myself with that one, and proud of the deck. And I absolutely love it. Definitely want to bring it back at some point. Another deck I'd like to bring back, which we actually did a deck profile on last week, is Gaiamon, which I've called Gaiamon OTK, but it's kind of, depending on how you play it now, it's not really an OTK. But I really love Gaiamon. I think it's great. It basically is just Greymon, but with a different top end, which is kind of funny, given that Greymon Toolbox and War Greymon OTK are both in tier 2, and this is in Rogue Tier. But you know, I think it's cool. It possibly is because of the image I've used. I didn't use the promo, which I probably should have. But at the same time, people know it's a BT21 tier list. It says it right up there. But if you guys want me to make sure I'm editing the images to make sure they're the most recent cards, please do let me know. I will try and go out of my way to actually do that. It's a lot of images for little old me to deal with, but I'll see what I can do. Heavy Metal Dramon, definitely one that I think can be good if it gets you know, the right sort of setup, and if you're piloting it in the right way, because it's a really hard deck to pilot, because you just splurge your resources completely. Like Heavy Metal Dramon is like that guy at the bar who's just like, oh wait, I've run out of cash. You know, it definitely does some really fun things, but no, I think definitely the right here. Leomon, this used to be a tier 2 gatekeeper, now it's a rogue tier gatekeeper. Technically speaking, got support in BT20, nothing in BT21 obviously. Yeah, I think that's fine where it is. Beelstar Loop, this can do some really funny things, but I think ever since Garurumon X and Gabumon X got put to 1, it's way harder to do those. So I agree with it being in rogue tier. I think that's fine. Shakuamon, I know this deck can be quite good. I mean, one person voted it in tier 1.5. That is a little bit optimistic. But you know, it could make itself unaffected by Digimon effects. It's got the partition stuff. Yeah, it's really, really cool. Love it. Ulforce. Now, this is a deck that no doubt is going to be getting support in BT22. You know, Rena and VV or Vidramon. Ulforce Vidramon, you know, both played pivotal roles in that game, so they are no doubt getting new support in that. But until then, rogue tier, I completely agree with. Just needs far too much setup because it's just too old at this point. Justimon, despite getting fairly recent support, rogue tier, I would definitely agree with that. Its tricks are a little bit niche. You know, it could do some really cool things, but not quite good enough. Ogubond. Now, this is a deck which I'm really, really tempted to bring to Jank Tank 10 whenever we do it. On account of the fact that Ogubond was the very first deck I brought to Jank Tank, and I love it. I love that deck so much, but there's so many things I want to play for Jank Tank 10. I am absolutely stuck and spoilt for choice. So I may even do a poll and let you guys vote on what I play so that I'm not deciding. You know, but I love Ogubond, but yeah. Rogue tier is absolutely where it belongs, as does Gabumon. Where are you, Gabumon? Where are you, Gabumon? Gabumon? Yeah, Gabumon also belongs in tier 2, rogue tier, sorry, because it's just not consistent enough and too gimmicky. Black Hybrid is nowhere near as good as it used to be when it had Mother and Shoto in it. Now it could just have Mother, or it could just have Shoto. And of the two, it probably wants to keep Mother because it has other ways of giving that big mommy blocker. But yeah, rogue tier I think is completely fine for it. Cherubi Tribal, this could do some really funny things, but again, consistency is an issue. So you know, this definitely belongs here. Diaboromon, now this is no doubt getting new support in BT22 and can go mega wide, so wide that a lot of these other decks will struggle. But other decks that have a bit more wider removal, absolutely fine. Legend Arms, yeah, again, this is piece dependent. Once it gets going, it absolutely can bang, you know, with the best of them. Just has, you know, protection effects for days and loads of stuff going on. But yeah, it's got to get there first. Machine Dramon. Machine Dramon will eternally get support because anything with Cyborg on it, it belongs to Machine Dramon. It doesn't matter what archetype it is, it just belongs to Machine Dramon, you know. So I completely agree with that being in rogue tier. Mastimon, again, I agree with this being in rogue tier, despite the fact it got the new promo card, which is pretty good. Again, just very, very, very piece dependent, as most DNA decks are. And it just doesn't do enough with a lot of those DNA shenanigans. Millith, yep, I agree with that. Now that Jack Raid's gone, which someone I think pointed out on the last BT21 tier list video we did, you know, this I think definitely is yeah, not as good as it used to be. Nightmare Soldiers, technically this shouldn't have been in the vote because it did win our first Jank Tank of this year, so it is a champion and thus is banned, at least until the Champions Tourney at the end of the year. But yeah, rogue tier, I'd agree with that. Nature Spirits as well for the same reasons as Nightmare Soldiers, both of them very piece dependent, both of them have got to get into their DNAs. Nature Spirits more so does less than Nightmare Soldiers does. Really interestingly, Black War Greymon is in rogue tier, which is why I thought Greymon Toolbox was, because this and this are really similar, just obviously this would not be using any War Greymons in it, so that's kind of interesting, and I definitely would be up to trying that in you know, in Junk Tank. because I like Black War Greymon. Black War Greymon's good. Really hard to remove off the board once it gets kind of set up into where it is, but also it's very slow, you know, compared to a lot of more modern decks. So we'll see. We'll see. D-Links, yeah, eternally this will be in Rogue Tier and Jank Tier. It's never going to get any better, let's be honest. Ryugumon / Zhang Peng, both the fish decks. You know, I definitely agree these being in Rogue Tier don't quite do enough. Ice Snow is terrifying in this tier. Oh my goodness, like this could do a lot of shit. You know, once you know, because it strips so many sources. It's technically got new support with the Vikemon. You can technically utilize that despite the fact it's got the wrong traits. You know, it can just shut off things with Hexablow. I'm kind of surprised it's ended up in Rogue Tier, I'll be honest, but also not that surprised because again, consistency is an issue for it. But you know, Pulsemon OTK / Pulsemon. This deck is kind of dead because we no longer have the BT17 Fenrir at enough copies, so it's really hard to kind of do. Pulsemon itself, I love, but definitely sometimes doesn't quite have the power to really catch up with stuff. And it was something I was tempted to play in the last Jank Tank, and something I'm also tempted to play in this Jank Tank. But we shall see. Next is Sylphimon. Sylphimon, I think, is really, really totally rad, bro. I'm so running out of words. And definitely been experimenting with this. Like I say, we've got a deck profile coming out for this that's very much been inspired by the works of both Charles in our team and Digidane. So you know the deck builds that we'll be showing in that deck profile. I'll definitely be give him my flowers where I need to. Don't you worry. But there's some really cool things that the deck can do. But again, consistency is definitely an issue for it sometimes. And then Chaos Gallant. Oh no, Yellow Hybrid. Technically, you could say this is Ancient Garurumon. But Yellow Hybrid, as it used to be, you know, not quite as good as it could be and was. Chaos Gallant. Now this, if you're being really technical, is just Megidramon. You know, but if you're playing this older stuff, you know, it's not as good. So, you know, yeah, I agree. Rogue Tier. Dynasmon hurts itself too much, so it can often just be around here. And for the same reasons, although we're skipping a tier a little bit because it's down here, Kentorusmon and Mitamamon down in Jank Tier makes sense because both of them just self-immolate. Sukamon, yeah, I can agree with this being in Tier 2, in Rogue Tier, sorry. Definitely, you know, has a lot of really interesting things it can do. It could be a really interesting engine, you know, on occasion. And this specific Sukamon, I think is great for any sort of black and yellow lists. But in general, I think it suffers a bit with, you know, a lot of the other issues we've already talked about. Dark Masters, how the mighty have truly fallen. I mean, if this deck had a Pokemon at 4, it would probably still be way up in Tier 1 or 1.5. But because it doesn't, yeah, it doesn't consist. It's not consistent enough, is what I'm trying to say. Eosmon, yeah, I agree with this being here. Someone put it in Tier 1. Why? But no, I agree with it being in Rogue Tier. 1 vote away from Jank Tier, though, which, you know, is fair. Royal Base, this one did get a new promo, and I think that's why it's ultimately ended up in Rogue Tier, but it's a very hard deck to balance and doesn't really do a lot. You know, so I could have seen it going into Jank Tier as well. Shakamon, the definitely a Rogue Tier dude right here, does some very, 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 very interesting things, manipulating security attack minuses and pluses and, you know, all this sort of stuff. But, you know, as we learned in the last Jank Tank, also one, you need to make sure you're piloting correctly, you know, because it is very confusing. Skull Hybrid. Now, this is not really a deck. This is my little pet project from a couple of Jank Tanks ago, and actually one Jank Tank 6. I friggin' love it. It's not as good, yeah, in Jank Tank because we no longer are allowed to play meta engines, so I can't play the red hybrid engine that I was playing with this. I would have to play, you know, something slightly different. But I'd love to bring it back. You know, maybe I even try and bring this back for Jank Tank 10. Who knows? I could cook. I could try and cook. Source Strip. This one can be way scarier than you think. You know, Sam has been cooking Source Strip for ages. I remember he sent me a deck profile for this probably before BT20 came out, with the new LM stuff that's only just come out in BT21. You know, source stripping of any kind can really just muck up any strategy, no matter what level of player it is. You know, unless you're Galactic Mon, you just ignore them. But yeah, source strip is really, really cool. Gamamon, I think, is a scary deck here, and as you can see, very close to being in tier 2. In fact, this one, if these were tied, would be really interesting. If there'd been one more vote into tier 2, one vote in tier 1.5, one tier in jank tier, no idea where that would have landed. But Gamamon, I think, could potentially be a really strong contender for jank tank, and in general, kind of the rogue tier scene, because it could do a lot of resource gathering and a lot of really tricky kind of plays. It can get, you know, it could delete things to the day. I mean, the serious one in this picture, you know, can just delete things twice whilst adding to his own sources. So definitely one to look out for. 4 Sovereigns made it into rogue tier. That is shocking. That is genuinely shocking. I mean, this deck was super scary when it first came out, but it's literally had no support since EX5. It's slowed down massively. It's not quite doing what it needs to do anymore. So yeah, no, I can totally see why this has ended up here, but I mean, holy crap, if someone ends up playing it in jank tank, that's going to be terrifying. Then the biggest shocker on this entire tier list, Mirage Galgamon, the scourge of like 5 formats, maybe 6 formats, maybe even beyond that formats, rogue tier and legal in jank tank. I never thought, even after a ban list, I would see Mirage fall this low down the tier list. Literally, last format, it was up here in tier 1, but now, with Mirage for BT11 down to 1, it's all the way down here. I mean, that is insane that it's ended up there. Wow. That's genuinely... Maybe I cook it for jank tank 10? Maybe. Nah, I don't think that's a good taste, even with it being legal now. But it's kind of tempted to try. Food for thought. Then Jank Penguin we've already done, and Omnimon Ultra S is basically just like Temu Omnimon. It does some of the same tricks. You can use some of the same support, but it just isn't quite there, you know. And was one vote away from being in the jank tier, you know. Then speaking of the jank tier, Bagra Army, yeah, look at the amount of people that put that into jank tier. Holy shit. Yeah, it's been crap since it first came out, guys, and I don't think it ever will be good, even with new support, if it ever gets any. Mamemon, yeah, all 20 of the votes. This is the thing as well. People seem to, you know, they seem to give up like halfway, because this is less voters than we had at the start of this tier list. But everyone voted it into jank tier. That's hilarious. Rosemon, also everyone voted that into jank tier, which that's quite funny in of itself, because I mean Rosemon feels like Bloomlord, but just not as good. And I guess it's Bloomlord, but really not as good if it's all the way down here. Chessmon, this can do some wacky shenanigans, can play out really, you know, lots of things, go really wide. But yeah, no, I agree, that being in jank tier. Fortitude Tribal, I tried cooking with this. Who the fuck put it in tier 2? You are wrong, sir. You are fucking wrong. Absolutely not. This is jank tier trash. You know, it's funny, and it could do some really, you know, janky stuff, but no, this person, you need to reevaluate. No. And Goramon, okay, now this one, I can see why you might vote in tier 2 for this one, because its battle tricks can really help it, but ultimately it doesn't get big enough. In this format, especially where DP is so integral to some strategies, it doesn't get big enough, and it can't. Green decks do not give enough DP to get big enough to do what they need to do. So yeah, I absolutely agree with that being in jank tier. Argomon, I can see that being there as well. A few more people voted it for tier 2 than in Rogue tier. That's interesting. But ultimately, again, this is a deck that hinges on getting to its top end. If it doesn't get there, then it just loses. You know. Green Gacha, I love Green Gacha, and this is another one I'd be tempted to bring for Jank Tank 10. I've played it in Jank Tank before. I think back in Jank Tank 4. And it can just do some really stupid things, like play out Paladin Mode Ace and Safagamon Ace for completely free with the Digimon. You know, it's really funny, but also very inconsistent. You know, it basically is like green in general is support for it, but because of that fact, it doesn't really have anything to kind of be the backbone of the deck other than, you know, random stuff. But no, I do love it though, as much as it's bad. Speaking of bad, and has been bad since it came out, Grey Knights. What even is this deck, man? This deck has been shit since the start. Go away. Ravemon. This one I think had a lot of potential when it first came out in BT13 EX4, but yeah, it's just it's never quite gotten to where people wanted it to, and I don't think it ever will. So yeah, jank tier I think is fair. Trains, someone put it in tier 2, but at least it's not tier 1 like last time. This is just bad Machine Dramon, and Machine Dramon itself is not that good. It does some cool things with collision and things like that, but yeah, this is very much the gentleman's deck, the gentleman who likes a bit of fun. Myotismon officially in jank tier now. Again, this one does have troubles with consistency. It has to be played in a very particular way to get where it needs to go. Once it gets there, then it can bang. It can definitely bang. But in general, I think jank tier is where it belongs. Yellow Lord Knight. Now this is quite an interesting one. One person put it in tier 1. I don't know if they maybe got that confused with the other Lord Knight decks. But Yellow Lord Knight can do some really funny shenanigans, like playing Valkyremon Ace for free, which is pretty cool. You know, so I think it's maybe better than jank tier. Maybe they're saying that. I'm pretty sure I voted it into jank tier. Did I vote it into jank tier? Where did I vote it? Where did I vote you, Yellow Lord Knight? I don't know. Maybe I put Rogue tier. I didn't put it in tier 2, did I? I didn't put it in tier 2, surely. Oh no, there it is, jank tier. Yeah. I did put it in jank tier, but that's all I have to say. 4 Great Dragons. This has had no support in ages. 2 people have put it into tier 2, and I don't know why. I feel like one of them is Alex, and I think he's done that for the bans. You'll tell me if it was you, wouldn't you, Alex? Wouldn't you? But yeah, I think jank tier, absolutely fair for that. Marsmon, I love Marsmon. Marsmon 1 Jank Tank 3, and I'd love to bring it back, but I want to try and play some different stuff. It can, you know, it's the deck that kind of first brought Raid into the game, and so it's very kind of basic bitch Raid. You know, it could do well, but just not well enough, I don't think. Mother Control. This is one I should have taken off the list entirely. This is a dead deck. Absolutely dead. Which is why it absolutely is in jank tier now, because you physically can't play it anymore. So it shouldn't have been on this list, and I'm sorry I left it on there. Titamon. One person put it into tier 1. Why? What's wrong with you? It's not good enough. It could do some cool things. It could use the Dark Animal engine. It could do some Ginkaku Rush things. But it really struggles with closing out games. Barbamon X. This one, again, funny mechanics. Not good enough. Jumbo Gamimon. I love Jumbo Gamimon. And whoever voted into tier 1 clearly is a man of culture. But you're also wrong. Some people, I mean, this one's a bit more split in compared to some of these other jank tank ones. Obviously, very jank tier 1. Sorry, very clearly in jank tier. But a few votes in rogue tier, 2 votes in tier 2, 1 vote in tier 1 for whatever reason. You know, so I love the jumbo list, and my personal jumbo list that uses the Armadillo engine. I've loved, and I am still experimenting with that. I've even experimented with using some adventure engine stuff in it. That whether or not I'd be able to play that in Jank Tank because of our meta engine rule, I'm not too sure. But no, I do love it. Kent and Mitama, we kind of already touched this one on, so I'm not going to go on it again. Wind Guardians is an incomplete deck. Until EX9 comes out, this deck is not good enough. Saying that, should we have taken EX9 into account when we did this tier list? Probably. Are we going to do a new tier list when EX9 comes out? Also probably. But right now, without EX9 in consideration, incomplete, pack filler, shit. Reaper Tribal, yeah, I can agree with this being here. Who have I voted this in tier 1? No. Hero. I love Hero. It's so funny and messy. But it's also one of the hardest decks ever to balance properly. It took me ages to get to a place where I'm happy with it. It's got a lot of really cool tricks because of the fact it's got such diverse archetypes within its kind of sub-archetype. You know, there are cards in it which are hero traded but are also completely fucking useless, like Davis. Stingy Davis. But I love the hero deck. I'm not surprised it got into Jank tier. And this is another one that I'm very tempted to bring in Jank Tank 10 because I friggin' love it and I would love to play it like in a proper tournament kind of setting. Sendril, until this gets new support, its engine is better than its top end. I can also see why a lot of people put it into tier 2. But I think ultimately Sendril's top end is missing things. It doesn't, you know, overclock is great. You're playing at your tokens is great, but we just don't do enough with that. We've got protection effects, but again, we don't do enough with it. It's very much an engine-based deck, and its engine is great, as we've seen. But, yeah, not good enough. Now, our last deck is Jellymon. And one person put this into tier 1. I have a feeling Dane is going to bring this for Jank Tank 10, which, if so, kind of spooky. I think Jellymon is pretty cool. You know, does a lot of source stripping, does a lot of memory gain, you know, gets quite good draw engine going. I think that's ultimately it's Jank Tank, a Jank tier legal deck, but it could be better than people think it is. But that is the deck as voted on by some of you guys, which is really cool. You know, it's what's insane is the fact that the people that have actually the votes are actually being logged. That is kind of sticking around the 20 people kind of mark. But the fact that we're getting 75 people, that's the most people we've ever had take part in the tier list. Just if those 75 people could be logged into the tier maker website, that'd be great. That'd be awesome. I'd love to properly see your opinions. But I think really, really cool that these tier lists are kind of getting better and better as, you know, in terms of turnout as we go on. And yeah, I'm sorry if this is kind of a little bit of kind of content regurgitation, if you will, but I just wanted to explore what you guys thought and have a proper sit down and look at it. So, you know, if you did like this video, like, subscribe, and ding that notification bell, and we'll see you on the next video, which will most likely be the Sylphie B profile that I talked about earlier. But until then, keep it digital.